All right, this is the Helios headlight conversion video. What to expect. This is a mandatory video I want you guys to all watch prior to paying for this product. There's 4 things that I want to go over of what you need to expect on these headlights to know what you're getting yourself into before the install, because it is a conversion. It's not 100% bolts-on kit. So I want to dive into a lot, the bracketry, the fitment, and then kind of go over the wire harness a little bit. Okay, so making ourselves to the headlight itself. This is kind of how it looks, how it fits in here. You can kind of see we're utilizing 2 of these bolts in the radiator support. There's bolts on the back of this as well. So you're not drilling any holes to actually bolt through. It's using the factory hardware as far as that goes. This is the cover itself of how it looks mounted, all of this stuff. The way that we have it attached is there's 2 bolts right here on the inside, and then on this side right by the blinker there's actually a magnet. So this is the most crucial key of what I want you to keep in mind. When you actually get everything arrived to you, shipped in the box, it's going to come separated. It's not mounted on the brackets when you actually get it. But after you put it on, this is where most people can mess up. So let's take this off real quick, and I want to show you. So the biggest mistake of what you can make is you can leverage it and pull it by the blinker side, because it's actually thin in a few areas just for the clearancing, where you will crack it. So we don't want that to happen. The basic thing you need to keep in mind is you need to pull it straight out. I always grab it from this side, put my thumb on the blinker light, and then just pop, and it pops right off that magnet, and you'll feel it pop out. So without the housing, this is how these lights look mounted up in here. You do have all your adjustments to get the headlights aligned appropriately and where they need to be. There's no adjustment on the blinker, but there's that magnet that holds the piece of the housing on. There's the bolts on there, so you can kind of see how that looks. So the cover was the first critical thing I wanted to go over. The second has to do with that blinker. If you're a very critical person, things cannot stray from factory settings whatsoever. You might not like this, but we do convert that from a 3-wire to a 2-wire to work with the LED, because as you know, who've ever changed out the blinker, it uses a 3-wire. So this still has the running lights and the blinker working, but there is something I want to point out. If your running lights are not on and you have your blinkers on, they will blink exactly how they should. So you'll see with the tail lights in there, they do blink together. However, the way that we have to convert this, if you have your running lights on and you're using the blinker, the hazards, let's turn the running lights on, they are going to blink separately. So it's not going to match anymore. So the running lights are on, we have the hazards on, and you'll notice that the front and the rears are blinking opposite of each other. So that is a trade-off. Like I said, if you are very particular about how things are compared to the factory setting, you will not like that, but I want to make you fully aware of it. Now the third thing is what you actually have to do to fit this bracket in here. So I will be pulling off the fender of that truck to kind of show you what needs to be done. If you're familiar with the sport headlight conversion, this is a little bit more extensive, but this is the factory headlight that goes in there, and we use these 3 bolts right there, part of our bracket, and this will not work with it. So you will be cutting, and I'll kind of show you how this works in the headlight, but basically this whole chunk is in the way to fit these things. But let's go over to this truck so I can show you exactly how it looks in the fenders. So again, this is the factory headlight shape with that extra corner in there. It's not clearance for the tire. But when you're looking inside of here, that is kind of what you're seeing. So you can see the reference, it doesn't stick out that much more. So if you have battery boxes, all of that, it's gonna fit no problem. That kind of shows your reference vertically of where it sits, but that's how it's gonna sit in the fender. This looks like a huge cut, and it is, but there's already a big hole here for the headlight wiring harness to go through the factory. The other thing that we add is in the wire harness, and I'll pull it out and go over it. But this is a bracket that houses the actual fuse box in here. The way that you know that you're mounting it right, it's going to say OCD horizontal with everything else, but this is going to mount here, and this is going to hold your relays and your fuses for this whole kit. But again, you can see kind of how that fits in there, and that's how it looks on the factory body there without the lights in it. Before I pull that fender off, let's go over the actual wire harness and kind of go over how things are, what to expect here. So when you get your package, you're gonna have this bag with all the wire harness stuff in here. So the bracket that I just showed you on that fender is right here. When you attach it to the fuse box, it goes right in there, you push up, it locks in place. But this is what holds everything that you need. We're very particular about serviceability and not proprietary stuff. So this is a watertight relay fuse box. You have two basic micro 5-pin relays, a standard fuse there, so you can go to any auto parts store and replace these things for not much money if you ever have a problem. A lot of HID kits, they have a proprietary relay. It's very annoying because you have to buy through them, and we can't stand that stuff. So this is the main harness itself. You are going to have one wire. So in this little bag, we have this. This purple wire is what is going to power your DRL. So this is the only thing that you're going to actually have to crimp on your side. If you install this and don't do anything with this wire off the bat, this doesn't carry any electrical load, so you don't have to worry about being shocked or anything like that, but this is going to be ran through the cab. The reason why we have this separate is if we had this attached, to push this thing through a grommet on the firewall, you are going to destroy that thing. And it just looks ugly. It doesn't seal off the cab from fumes, so we have it separate. So if you want the DRL, you're going to find an ignition fuse, then crimp this on, and you'll be good to go. When you're looking at the fuses themselves, let me pull over to my truck. The older 2nd gen style, which is that other truck, they are different than this one. But you're going to use a multimeter, see which one powers on in here with the key on. If you don't have a multimeter to actually check things, you can just trial and error. Plug this in, see if the DRLs turn off, if the key's off. If they don't, find a new fuse. But this is very easy. You pull a fuse, you put this into place. This is where the DRL fuse goes, and then the normal fuse of what it's taking the place of goes in this bottom portion. But this is how you're going to use your DRL. The other aspect in this wire harness, so we have all that. Now this connector is what you're plugging into the driver side headlight plug. And this is our own connector of what we have here. It's your normal 9004, 9007 plug, but we actually have it serviceable, and this is a weather pack seal on the backside. So 100% waterproof, clears everything off there. On the passenger side, we just have this cap. You don't have to install this, but this will go over the passenger side so you don't have open contacts to get moisture in there, corrode it all. But this will go on there. You have your 4 bolts for your headlight covers in there. And these you might not use. What these are for is on the blinker harness. So this plugs into the S2. This side goes into the actual normal blinker plug. This is something else that we made. It has an O-ring in here to seal against the body. And then this locks in, so it does a couple things. So going back over to this truck, so this is your blinker. You're gonna plug this in, and one key aspect is when you're looking at this harness, there's a black, a red, and a blue wire. You want the black wire to line up on the same side of the black wire on here. If you do it the opposite way, it's not gonna work. So black wire goes in there, plug that in as a conversion, and then this goes over there, and this is what's gonna give you a watertight seal. Gotta find the right orientation, twist it on. So it's sealed here, and it's sealed here. You don't have to worry about it. It also protects from pull out. What this shim is for, and every truck is different, so we don't know the discrepancies. So this one's actually loose, and you can tell, because if this is locked, I can actually spin this gasket still. The driver's side, it's tight. So the driver's side, you don't need an actual shim there. But if you have it loose like that on your truck, you're gonna place this over. This is gonna press fit onto here. You wanna make sure it's all aligned on that side. You can run a bead of glue around here to just make it waterproof, but that is what's gonna give you a watertight seal. It puts enough compression on this gasket and then you don't have to worry about water getting in there. But this is the reason for that little shim I just dropped. So you might have to use it, you might not use it, throw it away, no big deal. Okay, and we're gonna hit 3 and 4, so the last 2 things I wanna cover that are important before I pull this fender off and show you what needs to be cut. So as we know, we gotta cut that, but these trucks are old at this point. Some of these are 30 years old, and I wanna just point out a few things. So when you have a normal factory headlight, you are just fitting it in there. It's all mounted to the fender itself, so there is 0 adjustment. This one is being mounted on the radiator core, so there's actually adjustment. If you need to fix these lines and how things line up, you're going to be playing with the fender a little bit, you're going to be playing with the core support. In this truck here, what I didn't realize, and it was throwing me off a little bit, but these bushings of what's under here that actually hold this and isolate it from the frame, they kept their position after 30 years, but this whole thing was kind of crooked. So it's giving bigger gaps on one light than the other light. So you might have to get your tape measure out, measure from something like the windshield wiper squirter things, measure somewhere, but that's what I had to do. And this was like a 1/4 inch off. So I had to straighten it out, tighten the bolts down. And then when you're doing that, since this is completely isolated from the headlight now, if you're trying to fix gaps around here, if you're trying to fix gaps up here, you're gonna have to play with this fender a little bit, get the gaps all lined up how they should on the door, get them lined up on the headlight. There's gonna be a little bit of movement in and out of the radiator. You don't wanna go crazy because that fan's there, you don't want it to hit the radiator or anything, but if you're moving it, you know, a 1/16 an eighth of an inch, it's not gonna hurt anything. So those are the other 2 things I wanna point out, is cutting it and then just the fender alignment. You're gonna have to play with it, you're gonna have to spend some time. But the biggest thing of this install is taking those fenders off. You do have to take them completely off, so let me get to that. Okay, now we have that fender off. So I'm gonna show you a little bit more of this bracket. So you can see the 3 bolts back there of how it bolts up to the radiator, wraps around, has those bolts on the core support as well. So that's kind of how it looks without the fender on there. But this is the part that sucks the most, is when you are going to have to make these cuts on the fender, you got to remove the entire fender. If you've never done it, give yourself a whole day. If you're not great with tools and working on stuff, maybe give yourself 3 days. I have no idea. But keep that in mind. The passenger side is a lot easier because you don't have all this stuff on there. But you do got to completely remove these fenders to make these cuts happen. So let's go over to the fender and I'll show you what actually needs to be done. So coming over to the actual fender itself, I want to go over to the particular cuts that you're going to want to make. So most of what's holding it in are going to be spot welds. There's 3 areas. There's one on the bottom of the headlight, one area by the blinker, and then one area above it. Now some fenders are going to vary. This one only has 3 spot welds on the top part and 1 by the blinker. Other fenders I've had, they have 2 spot welds here, 4 up here. So just be aware of that. I don't think there's a designated amount, but those are the areas that they're spot welded. After you get these spot welds out of here, it's going to be separated from the actual fender in those areas. And then for your cuts, this is where you're going to want to cut. So there are overlapping sections on this fender. It's very distinct. You'll know what I'm talking about when you're actually looking at it. But the first cuts I want you to make are the vertical cuts of where this mounts against that radiator support. So you're going to make these cuts here. And then it'll kind of stand out of where you need to cut next, because this part of the pocket from here to here, that's factory. That's not something that I'm cutting. So you're not trying to figure out how far back to go, because you're just leading to this big opening that the factory puts there for the wire harness. I would recommend from this cut, go straight across. Don't dip down or anything to clear the bracketry. And then same on this bottom one. Go straight across and then kind of follow this fender line a little bit and then go up to the light to fit around that bracketry. I think the hole is probably about this big factory. So if you just made this vertical cut and then tried to go to it, you'd kind of have a cut like this, but we still need more clearance for that bracket. So that's the big thing of what you're gonna wanna clear. And then on the fender too, you wanna be very careful here. But when you're looking at the fender, you are gonna have to clearance a little bit here. So this goes straight across normally. You're gonna wanna dip in on this outer part of this rectangle cut in here. This is barely gonna clear that LP6 headlight, but you will have to clearance this a little bit more to fit the headlight. It is not something that you'll see from the outside. I'm about a 1/16 away from the outer part of that fender, but you do have to clearance this for the headlight. You have to remove this whole pocket, and then you'll be able to fit those brackets. But on this headlight, I know I keep stressing it, but you will not be able to put a factory headlight in there. If you really were careful and you took your time, you can kind of make it happen, because this is what you're cutting out aside from this one. So yours is gonna look more like this. But you'll be cutting out 2 factory headlight mounting locations. One for the headlight here. The other one here, it's not on this because this was on that truck and I had to clearance it for the tires, but there's another mounting point that does exist here that the headlight goes to. So if you cut it as clean as that, if you wanted to repurpose those lights down the line, use them for a different project, sell the truck and put the factory ones in there, you can kind of make it work. But I am saying that you're not going to be able to do it. I just don't want you to have that expectation, so you're not going into something being misled.